What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Naruto has awoken the Rinnegan after releasing a seal that was placed on him at birth? If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments. The soft, calming ball of flames cast a humming, endearing glow over the small village. Shops were slowly coming out of their overnight slumber and opening up for business. Stalls were being set up on the streets, the vendors behind them already attempting to attract customers. Wind blew softly over the village, blowing away the heat waves and tried to calm the midsummer heat. The peaceful faces of the Hokage, looking over their village, completed the picture of perfect serenity. Whoops of glee, shouts of joy and laughter tore through the perfect serenity. The villagers looked towards this new sound invasion, lols, to find the village's menace running through the dirt roads at breakneck speed, with men, women in billowing cloaks, with colored masks covering their face, chasing him. This was one of the 5 great ninja villages of the world, Konohagakure. The village hidden in the leaves. The current happenings were a regularly occurring phenomenon. Konoha would wake every morning to serenity, only to have it marred by the boisterous cackling of an orange-clad ninja wannabe. Naruto was a blonde-haired boy with a round, boyish face marred by 3 whisker-like markings on each side of his face. He always wore an orange jumpsuit with white, high necks and orange trousers that reached up to the top of his ankles. He would wrap up the bottom of his trousers in ninja wraps to keep it out of anything he might trip on. Evidently, the boy's fashion sense was a living abomination on the face of the planet. Naruto was the boy that was running through the town center, cackling like a mad scientist, with members of the Anbu Black Ops on his tail. His bright clothing, bright hair and maddening laughter gave the ninja perfect beacons in the crowd to track. Ducking into an alleyway that he knew led to his apartment, he left some of his ready-made traps in his wake as he darted towards his apartment. He was happy with the result of his pranks today, especially so since he had managed to prank the village leader, the Hokage himself. As he ran towards his house, he thought of the perfect crime he just pulled. Flashback. Naruto was forced through the large oak doors of the Hokage's office. He was originally in a good mood to get to see the old man again, but his mood quickly deteriorated upon seeing the glare the Hokage was sending his way, and he was sure that the glare was meant for him, not the Anbu behind him. The Hokage sat behind a large mahogany desk littered with paperwork, quills, pens, pencils and ink bottles. The room itself was quite large, filled with showcases full of trophies and pictures of old ninja that were honored in the village. One particular picture caught Naruto's attention, despite feeling the Hokage's glare drill a hole through the side of his head. He stared at the happy face of the 4th Hokage, the corners of his lips pulled up in a slight smile, his eyes closed in happiness and his blonde hair billowing softly in the wind. No matter how many times he came into the room, that one picture always managed to catch his attention. Hiruzen Sarutobi cleared his throat to catch Naruto's attention, and it had the desired effect, as he turned from the face of the 4th Hokage, Minato Namikaze, to the face of the 3rd Hokage. Hiruzen Sarutobi. Naruto always thought it was weird, but due to the death of the 4th a few years ago, the 3rd had to come out of retirement to take up the position again. Alright Naruto, 1. What prank did you pull this time? What damages did you cause and to what region? Sarutobi asked. The Anbu moved to answer his questions, but he held up a hand. I want Naruto to answer, no one else interfere. Actually, just leave me alone with the boy. The Anbu members that were in the room, standing behind Naruto and hidden in the shadows to guard the Hokage, left the room in complete silence. Naruto walked up to the old man's desk. Well GG, too, I didn't actually do anything this time. The Anbu were trailing me for some reason and they got to me before I started painting the Hokage faces. Naruto replied in all honesty. He didn't do anything this time, so he didn't need to lie to get out of trouble this time. Why would you even think of doing such a thing? The Hokage are respected people in our village, even you respect them Naruto. So why would you do such a thing to defile their memory? Sarutobi asked his surrogate grandson. He was surprised to say the least. Everyone in the village respected the Hokage, but in the heart of Naruto, the Hokage held a special place. Because I want to show everyone I will be better than them. I will show them that I can surpass all the Hokages and be the best there is. Was Naruto's simple reply. It may not have been logical, but it was a reply nonetheless. Naruto, I can't ignore this. Your everyday pranks I can overlook, but the defilement of a village monument is unacceptable." Naruto slowly paled and started to clam up as he heard his surrogate grandfather speak. He started to think of a diabolical plan to get him out of this situation. "I will be asking Iruka to oversee your punishment. Every day, I want you to," but he got no further. Transformation Jutsu. Naruto held his hands in a tiger seal. Immediately, a large amount of smoke poured out of where he stood and out came a voluptuous, blonde teenage girl with lush curvature. The girl was naked, but smoke covered her privates. As soon as he caught a sight of this, the Hokage shot backwards with his head leading his body. The force of the fountain of blood that was now pouring out of his nose was too much for even the greatest of the village to handle. He watched the old man fall backwards for a second, but he wasted no time. Quick as lightning, Naruto changed back to his normal self, grabbed a jutsu scroll that he had been eyeballing on the Hokage's desk for a while and jumped out of the open window. Recovering quickly from his plight, he summoned the Anbu that were outside his room. "Naruto ran off with one of my jutsu scrolls. I want you to go catch him and bring back the scroll and Naruto, unharmed." Hearing the warning in the Hokage's voice, the Anbu members disappeared from Sarutobi's office, but not before they caught the old man heave an exhausted sigh. As soon as the Anbu left his room, Sarutobi went back to his paperwork. Flashback end. Naruto laughed his happy, carefree laugh as he stepped into his hallway, jutsu scroll in hand. Even he was exhausted from trying to run away from Anbu Black Ops members, as seasoned as he was in the art of evasion. Well, the Anbu were the village's elite and he was a simple academy student running away from them. The dead last of the academy. Putting those sullen thoughts out of his mind, he decided to read the jutsu scroll and see if he could make heads or tails of a few complicated jutsu. As he opened to the contents section, Naruto read the contents of the scroll out loud. Fire style. Eternal black flames. Fire style. Giant phoenix flower. Fire style. Meteor shower. Lightning style. Thunderclap. Illusion style. Soul binding. Sword style. Crescent moon slash. All of those sounded like awesome and complicated jutsu, but what caught his attention was the last two jutsu on the contents page. Uzumaki sealing style. Chakra entrapment. Uzumaki bloodline. Azure Dragon's Wrath. Note: only for the usage of those with Uzumaki blood from the Uzumaki clan of Uzushiogakure, the village hidden in the tides. Naruto ran his finger over the last two jutsu, thinking of the village and clan he never knew, the kinsmen he had never met, the jutsu he had never learned. The sense of family and friendship he never had. Running out of the apartment and making for the training grounds, Naruto decided to go train. -6 months later, at the Ninja Academy. It was a pleasantly warm day today, warmer than normal for a winter day in Konoha. The Konoha Ninja Academy was abuzz with life. Students were running around everywhere, trying to revise or practice their jutsu at the last second. Yes, this was the day for their graduation exams. Many of the students were wearing less clothes that day, favoring to wear lighter clothes due to the warmer day. Many were wary, however, and brought heavier clothes along with them. Some left their heavier clothes with their parents in order to pick them up later if they needed them. The parents tried to stay out of the way of the students for the most part. They were starting to form a ring around the academy. Parents weren't allowed to see the actual exams, but they were more than welcome to come and pick up their children, along with their report cards and their exam results. Naruto was one of the few students that felt like he didn't need to practice. The others that weren't practicing weren't doing so because they were confident they would pass. After all, the Konoha Academy exams weren't all that difficult, not compared to other villages. Naruto, however, was not practicing because he knew, no matter what he did, he would be failed without question. Of course, there was also no way he was going to be able to pull off half the weak jutsu they were expected to perform. Iruka Amino came out of the front entrance of the academy, wearing a normal Chunin uniform. A green, long-sleeved top, a green flak jacket along with green pants. He was wearing his Konoha forehead protector proudly and was one of the few people that understood where forehead protectors were meant to be worn. Konoha ninja had a habit of using their forehead protectors as other weird things. He had a brown clipboard in his hand. "Alright, all participants of the graduation exam, please follow me." Iruka called and all the students, including Naruto, stopped whatever they were doing and started to follow Iruka. "Iruka-sensei, What are we doing for the exams? Sakura called out. She was one of the Sasuke fangirls. Pink-haired, worried more about her looks than her skills, though she had a fair bit of book knowledge. You will know soon enough, I will explain once we are inside. Iruka answered cryptically, giving away nothing of the actual contents of the exams and the manner in which the exams were to be conducted, as if he meant to entice them into being curious about their graduation exam. The class followed Iruka to a classroom. Iruka stopped in front of the door, opened it dramatically and let everyone through. As soon as Naruto, the last student in the line, went through the door, Iruka went in and locked the door behind him. This caused everyone to gasp. Sorry, but that had to be done. We don't want any outside interference while the exams are in progress. Iruka explained, trying to pacify those that were easily riled, and succeeding easily. Okay, sorry to keep you all waiting. Please take a seat according to where your names are posted on the seats. Everyone followed the instruction without a fuss. Naruto ended up sat sandwiched between Sakura, the crush of his short life, and Sasuke, his eternal arch-nemesis. He didn't know whether to be happy about sitting next to Sakura or angry about sitting next to Sasuke, so he decided to shut up and be neither. First of all, I will explain the first part of the exam. To those that are wondering, there are 5 parts in total within the exam. Some people looked at Iruka weirdly at this. They grew up hearing about the 4 parts to the exam, but what was this 5th part Iruka was speaking of? Many of you look confused as to what the 5th part may be. Well, I will explain. The first part of the exam is a written test. At this, everyone, bar Sasuke, who was too cool and emo, and Sakura, too intelligent and loving of written tests, groaned their displeasure. Iruka ignored the moans and groans and forged ahead. The second part of the test will be a genjutsu test. The third part will be taijutsu and the fourth part will be ninjutsu. These are all common tests that you all know about and have learned about when your parents told you about the exams. The 5th part is a new test that the Hokage himself has felt necessary to introduce. It will be a free test. What do you mean, a free test? Surprisingly enough, it was the class cool boy's Sasuke that spoke up. He never liked the unknown and had a near-phobic fear of it. Meaning you are free to do whatever you want to impress the judges. Each judge will give you a mark out of 1000 based on how you execute whatever you were doing, including style points and the power of your technique. One of the judges will be the Hokage himself. Iruka said proudly, looking at the odd faces of the students. He handed out the papers for the written test, and they begun. Everyone had finished the first 4 parts of their exams, and now they were waiting in line for the final part that would make or break their futures. Naruto knew he had done well in every part of the exam, other than maybe the written test and the final jutsu of the ninjutsu test, the clone jutsu, but other than that, he was sure he was going to pass. This free test, this was his chance to shine. Each student was called out in alphabetical order, according to their last names. Many did their clan's signature jutsu and executed them well. Many showed off their traps and survival skills. However, nobody got a score in the 900s out of a single judge and more people got a score in the 700s than not. Some even got a score in the 600s. The students were allowed to watch as each of their peers was called out to the training ground in front of the 2 village elders and the Hokage and they performed their techniques. All the materials they needed were provided by the examiners. The students watched in silent anticipation as the Rookie of the Year favorite, Sasuke Uchiha was called out to the field. Uchiha, Sasuke. Iruka called, watching as Sasuke made his way to the center. Sasuke walked out with a grim face of determination. He asked for a simple wooden dummy and prepared to show off his best jutsu. Slowly going through a few seals, he finished on a tiger seal. Fire style. Fireball jutsu. Sasuke called, jumping in the air. Taking a deep breath, he blew out a medium-sized ball of fire, aiming at the training dummy. As the fire engulfed the dummy as slowly died out, there was nothing left of the dummy but a stump that was burnt to a crisp. 892, 899, 912. Sasuke walked out of the clearing with an arrogant smirk on his face, having gotten the highest score of the day, as the Chunin cleared up the field behind him. Uzumaki, Naruto. Iruka called. The students almost broke out in mirthful laughter as Naruto walked with a passive face. He saw the display Sasuke had put on show, he saw how high the bar was, but he knew he could do better. He had jutsu that were far more powerful than a simple ball of fire. "Well, Naruto, what do you need for your technique?" Iruka asked impatiently, while silently wondering whether Naruto planned to do anything decent. "Would it be possible for me to showcase too? I would show more of my arsenal, but I only have enough chakra to do only 2 of these at a time," Naruto replied. The Hokage looked at him, grim-faced. "Naruto, if you can't do more than 2 of them, then I suggest you only do 1 of them. There is no need for you to go to the hospital with chakra exhaustion at your age and for something so simple as the graduation exam," the Hokage warned. Naruto nodded his understanding. "I will take a katana and a 7-foot-tall cylindrical piece of metal with a diameter of a meter." Many eyed him suspiciously. What is he trying to pull? There is no way someone like him can cut through a piece of metal that thick. "Heck, even I can't," Sasuke thought in astonishment. Despite his thoughts, he sensed there was something going on. "No way, Naruto Baka cut through a piece of metal? There's no way anyone but my Sasuke-kun that can do that," Sakura shouted out loud, ignoring the looks of annoyance from the males and the looks of agreement from the females. Naruto ignored everyone and everything around him as he took the katana in his hand and put it on his hip. Ever so slowly, he began to draw the sword in a majestic arc, while he chanted what sounded like a poem. "Azure flames freeze, and azure flames blaze, azure phoenix cry, and azure phoenix smile, azure dragon sing, and azure dragon wail." Slowly, as soon as the tip of the blade seemed to have left the sheath, he started to sheathe the sword again. "See, all he did was chant a poem," Sakura shouted, while others also shouted in agreement. Nobody caught the hundreds of slashes that went into the metal post. Even the Hokage only saw blurs that looked remotely akin to slashing. With an audible clunk, the sword was replaced in the sheath. The chunk of metal exploded in azure flames outlined in black. The flames engulfed all of the metal that was there, rising high into the afternoon sky as it burned through the atmosphere. No fragment of metal was left, no charred soil, no ash, nothing. The metal post just burned away into the air, leaving no evidence of what occurred. A perfect kill. Uzumaki bloodline limit, Azure Dragon's Wrath. Naruto hummed lightly, as he placed the sword in Iruka's arms. He walked away, without looking at the scores he got, already knowing the result. 1,000, 1,000, 1,000. Sasuke looked on in outrage. Naruto glared at his favorite teacher. It wasn't usually the case, he always got on with Iruka, though sometimes Iruka was more than a bit annoying for Naruto as he was the one that always caught Naruto after he played a prank. This time, however, Naruto had a legitimate reason to be angry at him. "I'm telling you, Iruka-sensei, someone's rigged the test. There's no way I didn't pass. I did half decent on the written test. I did okay on the genjutsu. I did better than most on taijutsu, and I would say my ninjutsu was a borderline pass. As far as the free test goes, I had, by far, the highest score in the entire academy. So tell me, Iruka-sensei, how the hell did I not pass the graduation exam?" Naruto hollered at Iruka, for once, in more anger than he usually blessed Iruka with. "Naruto, I can see that there is no reason for you to not have passed your exam. In fact, in my opinion, you should have passed with flying colors and praise. But it's not my opinion that counts here. I can't do anything about the marks you were given by the markers, it isn't my place to argue," Iruka pleaded, though he knew he wasn't going to get anywhere. Naruto could be really stubborn when he wanted to be. "So you're telling me to take this lying down? I have taken a lot of nonsense from a lot of people in my life, but this has reached a record low. What kind of bullshit is this?" Naruto screamed, but before Iruka could say anything, he whirled and stormed off. "Oh boy, I get the feeling I am going to really regret this later on. Lord save us all, that boy can be a handful," Iruka muttered to himself, before returning to marking the papers he was set to mark for the younger students in the academy. Outside, Naruto found a familiar face waiting for him, leaning against the column that supported the roof. Seeing Naruto approach, he too came towards him. "Dobi, I need to talk to you. Come with me for a bit," Sasuke commanded, not bothering with a greeting, or asking whether the other boy had time on his hand or not. "Not now, Teme. I have things I need to take care of. If you need to talk about something, talk about it here and talk about it now," Naruto replied, also not caring for niceties. "Fine, I'll tell you here. The jutsu you used in the 5th test, teach me how to do it," Sasuke said, taking on the same commanding tone again. Forget it, there's no way you could learn something like that. Naruto smirked. Why not? If you, a no-name dobi, the dead last of the academy can learn a jutsu like that, then why can't I, the rookie of the year, the heir to the Uchiha name, learn it? Besides, I have more need for a powerful jutsu like that than you ever will. Sasuke shouted, not bothering to check if anyone else was in hearing range. Simple. Is your precious Uchiha brain too small for you to understand the concept of a bloodline limit? Then let me make it clear for you. Only an Uzumaki can learn that jutsu. Naruto hollered back, then proceeded to walk away from the shell-shocked Sasuke. Besides, I need to talk to the Hokage about something. I don't have time to be wasting on people as arrogant as you. Naruto walked away calmly, leaving a dumbfounded Sasuke in his wake. Where is the useless, hyperactive dobi that he was until a few days ago? Sasuke thought. Naruto was currently talking to Mizuki, one of the Chunin that was a teacher at the academy. He wasn't aware, as of yet, why Mizuki wanted to talk to Naruto, but he said he wanted to discuss something important. Had it been someone other than one of his teachers, Naruto would have flipped him off and walked away, but alas, it was one of his teachers and he was forced to listen to him. Naruto, I'm sorry you didn't pass the graduation exam. I was one of the people that was in favor of passing you, along with Iruka, but the other teachers were for some reason completely and utterly against letting you pass. I'm afraid me and Iruka couldn't do anything about the situation. Mizuki started. Naruto was starting to have his doubts about whether Mizuki was going to talk about anything remotely important, or if he was going to just drone on and on about how unfair life was. He needed to get to the Hokage so he could complain, and Mizuki was currently getting in his way, frankly. But seeing as you're the only person that didn't pass this year, I know of a special graduation exam that you can take. Hearing that, Naruto perked up. If Mizuki didn't have it before, he certainly had the young boy's attention now. It only becomes available if only one member of a class doesn't pass the exam. All you have to do is prove your worth by taking the scroll of sealing from the Hokage tower, run away with it and learn a jutsu. If you can do that, you pass the special graduation exam. Something told him this was a trap, that this was stealing, that it would land him in serious trouble. Going against his better judgment, Naruto took off to find the scroll of sealing. Thump thump, thump thump, thump thump. He could hear his heartbeat in his ears, faster than it had ever been in his life. Though he didn't stick around to find out what happened, he hadn't left early enough to not hear the Hokage sending out the Anbu with a serious order. Bring the boy and the scroll back to me, both unharmed. I will deal with the thief personally. Those were the direct orders of the Hokage to the Anbu. Naruto's blood had ran cold as he heard the tone of the old man's voice. He knew he had done something wrong, so terribly wrong, but he couldn't go back now. His instincts told him from the very beginning this was a trap, and once again, his instincts were correct. Naruto didn't hang around long enough for the Anbu to find him before he took off, completely masking his presence and his trail. He wouldn't be caught, not by the Anbu, not by Iruka, not by anyone, no matter what happened. He would stay hidden and complete this special graduation test. He sped through the forest, jumping from tree branch to tree branch, as the sound of pursuing ninjas slowly became more and more distant. He was losing them, he was using his only talent, evasion. Coming to a small clearing, ringed with tall trees, within the forest, Naruto stopped to take a rest. His breath came in shallow, ragged pants. He ran as fast as his feet would carry him through the forest to get there, but he could move no more. Deciding to learn the jutsu now, rather than leaving it until later to do it, Naruto slowly unraveled the massive scroll. The scroll opened with a slight glow but no resistance. As Naruto sifted through jutsu after jutsu as they got harder to execute and more taxing to maintain, poring over complicated diagrams and puzzling explanations, his eyes ran over something that shook him to the soul. There, on the scroll of sealing, was a handwritten excerpt next to a sealing array that made his eyes water and his blood boil like molten fire. Dear Naruto, if you are reading this small piece of writing I had time to leave and you are seeing the sealing array that has been placed on this scroll, then I assume you have succeeded me as the 5th Hokage. First of all, I wanted to apologize for leaving you with something as heinous as the Kyuubi, knowing that the villagers would resent you for it. I am sorry for leaving you with such a difficult life, for cursing you to a hell on earth, but it had to be done. I had to do something to protect the village, and the only thing I could do was seal the Kyuubi away in a child, so the chakra network wouldn't be as developed as an adult's, so that the Kyuubi could be properly sealed. As you know, I had to give my life to make the seal, so I didn't have the liberty to experiment on as many babies as I wanted to. I had to get it right the first time, so the only baby I trusted to contain the Kyuubi was my own. I'm sorry I had to do something so criminal, but it had to be done. Your chakra network was already developed for a baby who was just born, so I had to place a seal on you to make sure your chakra was accepting enough for the Kyuubi to be contained. This seal, however, had the adverse effect of sealing your potential away, as well as a bloodline that you had seemed to inherit. When you read this Naruto, I want you to place your hand on the sealing array and pump a little of your chakra through your arm. No matter how old you are, I'm sure your chakra has already accepted the presence of the Kyuubi and you are ready to receive your true powers. Upon activation, the seal will also give you Ryujinjaka, your grandfather's precious Nodashi. It's a Uzumaki clan heirloom, wield it with honor. And always remember, me and your mother loved you, for however long we got to know you. Love, Minato Namikaze, 4th Hokage, your father. Gingerly placing his hand on the sealing array, he slowly pushed a little chakra into his hand. The seal did the rest. Rapidly, it drained Naruto of chakra completely and he suddenly became aware of a vicious presence in his body. Before he could think any further of this presence, the chakra was slammed back into his system, but the chakra was strengthened tenfold, causing his chakra network to expand. He could feel the fire in his veins, the raw power that was coursing around him. He could feel his mind expanding, his senses improving and sharpening. Not long afterwards, he collapsed from the stress and pain of having so much chakra pumped through his system. Naruto awoke to the sound of shuffling feet. As soon as he remembered where he was, he sat bolt upright, not wanting to get sneaked up on by someone. His eyes flew open as realization hit him. Looking around, he saw Iruka coming towards him. "Stay back, don't come closer," Naruto moaned in a hoarse tone. His throat felt like someone had used sandpaper to rub it clean. Not wanting to get caught, Naruto tried to stand up. "Easy there, I'm not going to hurt you. I'm here to pick you up, the Hokage wants to see you." Iruka tried to soothe him, rather than alienate him even further, but didn't stop his forward advance. "He's lying to you," Naruto called out a sickly sweet voice. Naruto, now stood upright, turned to see who the voice belonged to. Mizuki was standing on a branch on one of the trees that formed a ring around the clearing. "He only wants to get the scroll of sealing from you and use it for his own gain." Somehow, Naruto felt sharper, smarter, faster and stronger, though his body ached and complained, almost refusing to listen to him. Things looked clearer to his eyes. He could see chakra coming off of the bodies of the two ninja close to him. He could hear both of their calm breathing. His brain worked faster than ever. "No, you tricked me. You only wanted to get the scroll. You are the one that wants to use it for his own good," Naruto muttered in a deathly calm tone. His eyes shifted from Mizuki to Iruka. "Take the scroll and give it to the Hokage. Roll it up and no matter what you do, do not read a single word that is written in that excerpt." "What are you going to do, Naruto?" Iruka asked, already rolling up the scroll, looking at Naruto with concern. "I am going to take care of this traitor and come back to the Hokage tower. I have some explaining to do to the old man," Naruto replied, already turning towards Mizuki and getting ready for a battle. Spotting a flash of yellow from his peripheral vision, he moved towards it rather than Mizuki. "You may be the demon, brat," Mizuki started, only for Iruka to interrupt. "No, stop Mizuki. It's forbidden," Iruka screamed, cutting off what Mizuki was going to say. "Why not? He would learn about it someday. That he is the reincarnation of a demon." For the second time in less than a minute, Mizuki was interrupted. "Save your breath, I already know I was the one who the 4th Hokage sealed the Kyuubi in. There is nothing surprising about it, considering the treatment I received from the village." Naruto sighed slowly. He had picked up a Nodashi from the floor. It had appeared there once the seal was removed, as his father had promised. A black lacquered Nodashi patterned with azure flames. The hilt was a simple white, the pommel a stark silver. The sword was simple, but even an amateur could see the craftsmanship behind in the sword. It exuded power and menace. Iruka gasped upon hearing Naruto say this, while Mizuki only sighed. Iruka opened his mouth, then closed it, only to open it again. Forget it, Iruka-sensei. Just go, I don't mind one bit. I'm going to quickly finish off this moron and come to catch up with you. Naruto was getting tired of waiting. Well then, demon, how do you plan to beat me, a chunin, in that crumpled, humanoid form of yours? Mizuki screamed, convinced that Naruto was the Kyuubi and not Naruto himself, and pulled out a Fuma shuriken. Simple. One move, that's all I need. Naruto said, implying just how much stronger he was than a normal chunin. Azure flames freeze, and azure flames blaze, azure phoenix cry, and azure phoenix smile, azure dragon sing, and azure dragon wail. Suddenly, Naruto wasn't in front of him anymore. One moment, he was there holding onto the Nodashi, while the next, he was gone. Vanished into thin air. Something was burning, he could smell it. It was something alive, fleshy. It smelled like burning meat. With horror, he realized what was happening. He screamed as pain overtook his mind and his body started to burn away. Standing on a branch a few trees behind where Mizuki was previously standing, Naruto muttered, Uzumaki bloodline limit, Azure Dragon's wrath. Naruto was happy with this new katana, it seemed to be attuned to the azure flames. He wasn't, however, happy with the way his body had reacted when he had used chakra. His chakra network burned, as if it was still recovering from the strain of the seal that had just been recently removed. I really like this jutsu. Burning away the target until even the atoms don't remain. The heat that it gives off is ridiculous, but so is the amount of chakra that it consumes. Whoever invented this jutsu is a genius, combining space-time ninjutsu with fire and wind manipulation and then outputting it through the sword. Took me 5 months of constant chakra exhaustion to even get this jutsu to a point where it can be used. I still need to master it though. Naruto's thoughts ran rampant as he sped through the forest to catch up to Iruka. Naruto awoke to a smell of disinfectant, sight of white sheets and curtain and the sound of a whispered conversation. He wasn't aware of where he was or what had happened after he killed Mizuki. Where am I? Naruto thought. I'm telling you Hiruzen, there is no need to put the genin back into the academy just because of one measly dead last, Danzo whispered to Sarutobi, trying not to wake the already awake Naruto. What's going on? Where am I? Naruto questioned, cutting into the conversation that the older males were having. He wasn't aware of it just yet, but they were talking about him. Naruto, good to see you awake. You are in the hospital. I admitted you here because of chakra exhaustion and some minor damage to your chakra network. How are you feeling? Sarutobi asked the boy kindly, not giving him any clues as to what the prior conversion was concerning. I feel fine, just a bit sore, hungry and most of all thirsty. However, all things considered, I feel perfectly fine. How long has it been since my admission? To say Sarutobi and Danzo were surprised was an understatement. Overnight, the boy's tone of voice had changed, along with his speech pattern. No longer did he speak in a friendly, bright voice, gone was the sloppy, almost tramp-like speech pattern that Naruto had used before. What's going on? The boy sounds more like a Hyuga than a random ninja that lived on the streets for half their life. Danzo thought in astonishment, while Sarutobi thought in a similar line, but in a much kinder fashion. Not long, you just slept overnight, Sarutobi answered, ignoring the fish-like gaping Danzo was doing right now. I see, when will it be possible for me to take my leave? Also, concerning what you were speaking of before I intervened, what were you implying when you said the genin were being sent back to the academy? Naruto asked suspiciously, his second question being directed at Danzo. This time, Danzo answered coldly before Sarutobi had a chance to answer the question. Sarutobi has decided the genin that recently passed should be sent back to the academy due to corruption and favoritism among the teachers. This time, he has decided all students will be monitored by a Junin he trusts. You will be able to leave any time you want, you have been treated. Sarutobi added, remembering the first question that was asked. I see. I will take my leave after a short slumber. As for the other matter, I agree. I was the only one that failed the graduation exam, even though I was certain I was one of the top-scoring students during the exam. I scored, by far, the highest on the 5th test, which was said to award the highest amount of marks towards the end result. This shows that there is at least a slight bit of corruption within the academy teachers, as well as the fact that one of the teachers of the graduating class was a traitor who I, regretfully, had to kill. Naruto informed, much to the old men's shock and to Danzo's chagrin. The Hokage only nodded at the information provided by Naruto, while the Warhawk only thought, "You foolish brat, of course I know there was corruption within the academy. I was the one that ordered them to fail you after all." Naruto frowned at the smirk that had unconsciously come onto Danzo's face, but chose to ignore it. "Now, if you will excuse me gentlemen, I have some sleep to catch up on." With that, Naruto was back under the covers and under the cover of sleep. Naruto felt himself floating in what he assumed was air. He could feel nothing, literally nothing, hear nothing, smell nothing, taste nothing and see nothing. He was floating in a timeless black abyss. He couldn't feel any clothes on his body, so he assumed he was naked. "Where am I?" Naruto thought, still half asleep. Thinking set in motion a chain of events. First was the fact that the black abyss morphed into something more substantial, a sewer, but there was no pungent smell. The color of the atmosphere slowly turned from black to a dull olive green. "Where am I and what am I doing here? What's happening?" Naruto thought, slightly panicking. Suddenly, he could feel an overwhelming, evil presence near him. As he looked towards where he thought the presence came from, he saw what looked to be a jail cell. The inside of the cell glowed a dull, reddish orange. "You don't realize where you are, brat?" A deep, gravelly voice seemed to call from the depths of the cell. The voice shook him to the core of his very being. "You don't recognize who I am?" Something told Naruto he should be scared of what this thing was. He still didn't understand where he was, or how he had got there, but this thing made him forget all of those worries and focus on it. He didn't know if he should actually be scared of the thing, seeing as it was behind bars, but he decided to be wary. "Who? What are you?" Naruto called, not wanting to speak too much, lest he speak out of line and anger whatever it was that was behind bars. "I am the nine-tailed demon fox, brat. Your tenant, as you might know." The fox came in full view of Naruto now, his demonic coat glowing with power, his slitted eyes blazing. His entire gigantic form exuded menace, rage, greed and all things negative in the world. Seeing the fox this close, Naruto wanted to run and hide like a little child. "So, what do you want with me? Why did you bring me here?" "Well, I assume it was you that brought me here." Naruto fought the urge to run. He knew running would do him no good here. If the fox wanted to, he could come after Naruto and destroy him within a second. "I wanted to speak with you, brat. It seems the time has come for us to make a pact, so as to not get in each other's way," Kyuubi said, though in his mind, he was thinking down a different line. "Of course I want to make a pact with you. The eyes you unlocked with your potential because of the seal puts my life in jeopardy. I might not want to admit it, but I can't do anything against those eyes of his." Sure. Naruto forgot the previous fear he had for the Kyuubi. He surprised the proud fox by smiling and walking right up to the giant rods that were keeping the Kyuubi captive. "So, what would making the pact with you entail? I assume you want to offer something, but you want something in return? Look, brat, I have been stuck inside you for the past 10 years. I might not want to admit it, but even I can see that I am not getting out of you anytime soon." At this, the fox grimaced, making his intimidating features look truly frightening. "So I want to offer you my full cooperation. I will allow you to use my chakra at will, but in return, I want your word that you won't enslave me with your eyes." Naruto didn't seem to be listening, though he was, and was climbing up the gate that kept the cell closed. Upon reaching the center, he once again surprised the Kyuubi, but this time, by ripping off the seal that kept him captive. "Brat, do you realize what you have done? You have set me, the nine-tailed fox, the Kyuubi, the greatest demon on this planet, free. You have set me free." The Kyuubi's voice rumbled like thunder, the pressure from his presence multiplied tenfold. A nurse had come into Naruto's hospital room to change the sheet, assuming that Naruto had already vacated the room. So imagine her surprise when she saw a boxer-clad Naruto laying in the bed, looking peaceful. At first, before seeing Naruto, she was humming happily to herself. She enjoyed her job, helping out at the hospital, helping the injured, the sick, the elderly. Even she, however, had to admit that doing the same chores day in and day out had gotten more and more tedious, boring even. They felt like chores. Her breath hitched in her throat when she saw Naruto laying there. She walked slowly towards him and tucked the sheets under one of her armpits to allow the other hand to be free. She intended to wake Naruto so she could change the sheets. She dropped the sheets and let out a blood-curdling scream as an orange, rage-filled aura consumed the room. A doctor came running. wanting to see what had happened for a nurse to have screamed like that. Seeing the state of the room, he did the most rational thing he could think of. Inform the Anbu and the Hokage, the demon is running rampant. He called. I know what I did. Kyuubi, Naruto was cut off by the Kyuubi. Call me Kurama, brat. That's my real name. Right. I know what I did, Kurama, but the fact that I released the seal father had put on you doesn't mean that I am allowing you to do as you please. Naruto explained, not missing a beat even as he referred to the fourth Hokage as his father. So you found out about the fourth being your father. I won't lie to you, brat, even I held that man in great respect. At this, Kurama's eyes glazed over, as if reminiscing about the past. But what do you mean, you won't allow me to run rampant? Let me clarify, brat, you set me free. Keep your hair on, sheesh. What I am doing is not allowing you to run about and do as you please, but offering you an extension to our pact. As he said this, Kurama's eyes lit up as if intrigued. I will allow you to live outside of this horrid place, maybe even allow you to come out from time to time, but you must promise me your complete allegiance. I expect you to listen to every word I say and never, and I mean never, attack the village or attempt to take over my conscience. Kurama contemplated his words for a bit, thinking it over and tossing it around in his mind. He seemed interested in the deal. On one hand, I can't do absolutely anything I want, but in exchange I would be as close to freedom as I could hope for. In essence, this is offering me good living conditions and a will of my own. Well, what do you think? Want to take me up on my offer? Naruto was never known for his patience, and even after removing the seal, his lack of patience showed no sign of improving. I will take you up on your offer, brat. It's the best living conditions I have ever had within a Jinchuriki. Somehow, Kurama's tone of voice sounded lighter, as if he wasn't trying to kill everything in the general vicinity with just his voice anymore. Thanks, Kurama, Naruto smiled, and his smile got even wider when something clicked into place in his mind. I will never be alone and family-less while you're still here. What are you trying to say, brat? Kurama had an inkling as to what his container was saying, but he did not want to jump to any conclusions. After all, the idea of a human being calling a great demon such as he a part of their family? Utterly ludicrous. Well, think about it. Throughout my entire life, you are the only thing that was constantly there. It's like you're trying to fill up the void left behind by my parents. After all this, I think it would be an insult to not at least consider you a friend, if not family. Naruto said, his smile set perfectly in place. For the first time in his long and arduous life, and not for the last, Kurama smiled. Not one of his menacing, I am about to demolish your life, smiles, but one of his, I am actually really happy, smiles. As what could only be interpreted as an affectionate gesture from the fox, he placed his right forepaw on Naruto's head, simulating a fatherly pat. Your parents would be proud of you, brat. Even after all this, he still called him a brat. Naruto, wake up. Hiruzen was shaking Naruto by his shoulders, attempting to wake the small, blonde boy. Naruto was sweating profusely, his small frame shaking violently without the Hokage having anything to do with it. Whatever was happening to Naruto, it was scaring the third, and he wanted the boy awake as soon as possible. Slowly, Naruto's eyes fluttered open slightly. He felt something on his shoulders and he was wondering what it could be. Ignoring the old man shaking him, he sat upright and rubbed his temples. Naruto, you okay? You were shaking like a leaf and leaking chakra. You really scared me for a bit. Sarutobi half shouted, half spoke. He was shaken up and most of all, worried about Naruto and his seal's condition. It took Naruto a few precious seconds for him to get his bearings and drape his legs over the edge of the hospital bed, precious seconds that the old man spent worrying about him. Don't worry, Gigi. Everything is fine, but I think you would want to know about what happened while I was asleep, Naruto said, at which Sarutobi arched a perfectly groomed eyebrow. It's quite important to my status as a ninja and whether you want to still let me pass through the academy. Why wouldn't I want to let you through the academy? Naruto, don't tell me you did something stupid. Sarutobi trailed off, waiting for Naruto to answer with patience that could only be accumulated through the endless years Sarutobi spent as a ninja. Naruto shook his head. I can't tell you here, not while anyone could walk in on us. As if to prove his point, a nurse walked into the room with new sheets. Not the same nurse as before, that one was still recovering from what she saw earlier. Does this have something to do with Naruto leaking the Kyuubi's chakra earlier? Fine. Meet me in my office in an hour or so, but first go to your apartment and get cleaned up." With that he vanished in a swirl of leaves. "I believe all my belongings have been taken care of." At this, the nurse only nodded a silent head. "Good, then I believe the time for me to take my leave is long overdue." He too vanished in a swirl of leaves. Naruto walked into his apartment to find the messy flat completely clean and void of any mess. "Strange, my house is always messy, regardless of how careful I am," Naruto thought in confusion. He had more than a reason to be confused. His apartment never stayed clean for more than an hour, even after he cleaned. Naruto was immediately on high alert. Years of beatings, torture, evasion and stalking the streets at night for supplies had driven home one thing into his young mind. Caution. 1. Even when entering the apartment, he had made no noise. His presence gave nothing away, not a sound, not a smell. He had learnt long ago how to mask that using chakra. Several run-ins with the Inuzuka clan had taught him the importance of masking the latter. Taking no risks, Naruto prepared 2 chakra entrapment seals, one in each hand, and started walking towards the living room. This time too, he walked through the door without a single squeak, without a single noise. At this point in time, even though he was young of age and shallow of heart, he was a master of stealth. No matter what the villagers said or did to the young boy, no one could deny it. Right now, Naruto was using every single ounce of those skills in stealth to keep himself hidden, lest he run into something unpleasant. He had no idea just how unpleasant his discovery could have been, if only his discoveries had nothing but good intentions towards him. There, sitting on his old and ragged couch were 2 men. Well, that's what Naruto assumed they were. One was taller than the other by quite a fair margin, and they both slumped backward as if asleep. They were wearing long black cloaks adorned with red clouds. Simple hats made of straw covered their heads. Naruto had heard about these legendary criminals. He had seen them in the bingo books that he stole from the trash cans. Akatsuki. Naruto's mind froze, literally froze. No thought went through him for a while. He just silently stood there with the seals still active on his hands. He couldn't comprehend what someone along the lines of members of Akatsuki would be doing here. Almost as soon as his mind froze, however, his mind started going into overdrive. All his senses suddenly sharpened, his eyes started consuming chakra, but in turn, his vision got a lot better. He seemed to be able to see the chakra in the 2 relaxed figures on his couch, and he was scared. Their chakra signatures were massive. What the hell are they doing here? Well, I can't do much other than seal away their chakra and hope for the best. There is little hope for me to fight and win against such opponents. Naruto thought, keeping his calm despite being scared out of his mind. Slowly and silently creeping towards the 2 limp forms on his couch, he did what he could to keep himself safe at that moment in time. Pumping all the chakra he could into the seals, so they would hold fast for a long time and resist a high chakra output, he tapped both the men on their heads and pulled out his nodashi from its sheath. "Wake up!" Holding the nodashi over both of their torso, he shook them awake one by one. "Who are you and what business do you have at my residence?" Itachi turned around, paying no heed to the blade which pointed somewhere between his upper chest and the lower part of his throat. Coal black met sapphire blue as Itachi tried to put Naruto in a genjutsu with his Mangekyo Sharingan. A shocked expression flitted momentarily across his face, before his face returned to the old stoic mask. Kisame was watching the exchange with a bored look, still trying to figure out just why he couldn't channel any chakra through his body. "Uzumaki-san, please lower your blade and sit with us. We have much to discuss." Itachi's voice was a lot lower than he thought it would be, seeing as the man had less than masculine features, by his opinion. He was expecting something higher and more feminine. Walking around the couch and sheathing his nodashi, he decided to sit on the ragged armchair across from the criminals, all the while keeping a careful eye on both of them. "Itachi-san, can I kill him?" Kisame asked, much to Naruto's fear and Itachi's ire. "No, Kisame, I will not allow you to kill the boy." This relieved Naruto somewhat until Itachi turned to him. "Tell me, Uzumaki-san, why are we not capable of using chakra at this moment? I placed a seal on both of your heads. There is no point in struggling, though there are very limited places where I can place that seal. I happen to have had access to the one that is usually the most effective," Naruto replied. He was going to ask more of the pair, but he was under the impression that talking out of line would get him nowhere good. It never did. "Please, don't be afraid. We are only here to talk to you. You will find that our proposition would be highly beneficial to you, especially seeing the dujutsu you seem be in possession of." At this, Naruto's face turned confused. "Judging by your expression, I take it you are unaware of your bloodline?" "Oh, so that's what the scroll meant." Naruto breathed, not daring to speak too loud. As time wore on, he was becoming more and more scared. He wasn't used to being in the presence of such dangerous people, people that may or may not be hostile. "Please relax, we bear no ill intentions towards you." The corners of Itachi's lips pulled up a bit, which Naruto took to be his attempt at a comforting smile. "Seeing as you have such a powerful bloodline, I would like the opportunity to train you." Now, Naruto was no fool. Had he really been the idiot that he was pretending to be in front of the village, he would have jumped at the possibility of being trained by someone remotely as strong as Itachi. However, idiotic he was not. "Why are you doing this?" When Itachi opened his mouth to answer, Naruto held up his hand and continued, "Don't tell me it is due to the bloodline. I am no fool, Itachi Uchiha, and only a fool would take help from a shinobi as powerful as you, knowing that you might have hostile intentions. I assure you, I have no hostile intentions towards you." When Naruto didn't respond and only looked at Kisame, Itachi tried to defend his partner. "Neither does Kisame, as I'm sure. His earlier comment was only him being normal. He rather enjoys bloodshed." Naruto cringed for a mere moment. "It still doesn't explain why you want to train me. If you really did want to train me just because I possess this bloodline, then pray tell, what are you doing in my house?" "What do you mean?" Itachi could see him getting suspicious. "It's true I hold no ill intentions, but even still, this boy is sharp for a child that is still in the academy. Please, like I said, I'm no fool. Judging by your reaction after seeing my eyes, I can only think that you only found out about my bloodline after meeting me in person, which still leaves the question, why are you in the premises of my residence? Where did the boy learn to talk like that, and why was his mind so sharp? Besides, I can tell by your attire that you are members of Akatsuki. If I know one thing about Akatsuki, it's that they are not friendly. Especially the two of you, Itachi Uchiha and Kisame Hoshigaki." Itachi's eyes widened. He was expecting the boy to know his name, seeing as they were from the same village, but for him to know Kisame's full name? Where was this boy getting his information from? "I was expecting you to know my name, since we are originally from the same village, but how do you know about Kisame?" Naruto only rolled his eyes. Criminal or not, it was really comfortable talking to them. Talking to Itachi was like talking to the older brother that he never had. Itachi Uchiha, currently aged 15, graduated from the academy at the age of 7, became a chunin at the age of 10, and by the time you were 13, you were an Anbu captain. The third known person to have awakened the Mangekyo Sharingan, but due its use, you are now nigh blind. You killed your entire clan a few years back, with the exception of your younger brother Sasuke, and ran away from the village and became a missing nin. All through this, Itachi's eyes became wider and wider, while you told your brother to hate you after torturing him through the use of Tsukuyomi, and left him for dead. You really loved your brother from the bottom of your heart, and still do, I assume. Though you told him that you killed your clan in order to test the extent of your abilities, you really did it to stop the coup that your father and the senior clan members were planning. Itachi-san, is this?" Kisame started, only to be interrupted by a thoroughly irritated Itachi. "Be quiet for a second, Kisame." Slowly, Itachi turned to Naruto. "How do you know all of this, and who gave you this information?" Naruto decided to ignore the outburst from the otherwise calm man, and continue with his barrage of information. "Though the Hokage was unaware, you were under the orders of Danzo Shimura. You were given a choice between dying with your clan, while the village took damages in order to completely annihilate the Uchiha clan, or you simply killed the Uchiha yourself and saved your little brother, who was innocent, but becoming a missing nin in the process. You, being the traumatized pacifist you were, obviously chose the second option for the betterment of the village." He looked into Itachi's eyes, daring him to contradict. "While this was happening, you met up with Madara Uchiha, who would have attacked the village, but you pacified him through offering to eliminate the Uchiha clan for his revenge. Did I get any of that wrong?" Itachi only gaped for a few minutes. As calm and collected as he usually was, he had no idea how to react to this insolent child that seemed to be able to pick apart his greatest secrets with the greatest of ease. Finally, finding his voice, he muttered, "How do you know all of this?" "Simple. Being hated and tortured by the village as I grew up, I was forced to become far more mature than my age allowed. Since I was always hunted by the village, sometimes even by high-ranking tracking ninja, I had to quickly learn to become stealthy, Naruto replied. That still doesn't explain how you know all of this about me. Itachi was showing minor signs of shock. He was honestly baffled by this kid. I also stalked the streets at the time. Seeing as I was homeless and lived on the streets, I would usually go from place to place in an attempt to find whatever food I could. Itachi only nodded, still not understanding where information gathering came into this. One particular day, I had found a rather decent meal for my standards at the time and I was quite full. I happened to have found the meal in one of the trash cans in the Uchiha compound and coincidentally overheard your father's plans about the coup. So naturally, curious boy as I was at the time, I decided to tail the most powerful Uchiha I could think of. Itachi looked at him like he was crazy. You tailed me for 3 days without me noticing anything? Impossible. You may have learned some stealth, but staying hidden from me for that long is laughable. Itachi sounded calm for someone so full of rage and turmoil. If there is one this I learned about stealth, it's that the best way to hide is in plain sight. I transformed myself into a fly and hid in your hair for 3 whole days. Kisame looked skeptical while Itachi's face finally morphed into one of understanding. It was hard going without food and water for 3 days, but that's only for a normal person. It was a piece of cake for me. So that fly was you. I always thought that it was too persistent to be a normal fly, but I never acted upon the notion. I was quite tense due to the circumstances at the time. Itachi got up and gave him a pat on the head, before sitting back down. You are quite well informed about me considering you are still in the academy. So you have no information on me? Kisame whined, he almost sounded like a petulant child. Nothing on you Kisame Hoshigaki, other than the fact that you are an SS-ranked missing nin from the village hidden in the mist. Were formerly one of the 7 swordsmen of the mist and are the wielder of Sadanaga, a chakra-consuming blade that looks more like a barbarian's club. You are also famed to have chakra reserves comparable to that of the Nibi, the 2-tailed beast. Naruto droned. Wow, for someone that says you don't have any information on me, you sure know a lot, Kisame muttered. Disappointed that he wasn't as unknown to the blonde library as he once thought. Tell me kid, where did you get the dirt on me? A bingo book one found in a trash can once, I still have it. It was one of the ones that included all the known criminals with all the known information on them, going from D rank all the way up to SS. I can only think it was for someone from Anbu Black Ops or an elite Junin. Explains things. Itachi rejoined the conversation. So, are you ready to accept my reasoning? Right now? No. You still haven't told me why you are in my house. Itachi let out a tired sigh. Well, you were right. We were formerly members of Akatsuki, though the reason for us being here is that we have since left the organization. The man that was running everything calls himself a god, and expects all of us to kneel to him. We are powerful ninja, all of us, and that doesn't sit well with us. So we decided to leave. Explains why you are here at the most. Why do you want to train me? Naruto asked, his ever-suspicious glare in place. At this point in time, Itachi had resigned himself. This boy is too smart, way too smart to be the dobi of the academy. There is something missing in the picture, but one thing is clear. This kid is way smarter and stronger than he lets on. The Akatsuki are planning on gathering the Biju and essentially take over the world. The 2 of us leaving puts a kink in their plans, but it's only bad enough to delay them. For us to truly counter them and stop their plans, we are planning on training you up to our level so they can't get their godly paws on you, Kisame said simply. Naruto nodded. Okay, for now, I will leave the seals on you. I am going to go take a shower, get changed and head out. Both of his guests looked confused. You 2 are coming with me. I have an appointment with the Hokage in about half an hour now. Wait, are you trying to hand us in or something? Kisame almost shouted. Kisame-san, please keep your voice down. I plan on doing no such things. The Hokage is an understanding man, and I don't plan on harboring SS-ranked criminals in my house without his knowledge or approval. He paused for a second, though, if what you say is correct, there is no reason as to why you should be taken in. From what I know about the Hokage, he should have no problems with you living with me, and as far as I am aware, he should be willing to take Kisame-san into our shinobi system, and reinstate Itachi-san in his former position. We shall see, but keep in mind we don't plan on getting discovered. Itachi tried to play the peacemaker, as always. Sure. With that, Naruto was off to take his shower. "Remind me why we are like this," Kisame said, trying his best to keep his voice even and his sword from mauling the brat in front of him. He was correctly disguised as a 14-year-old boy with long, red hair and bright, silver eyes. He was wearing the traditional, "kill me now," orange that was usually worn by the Uzumaki boy. His clothing, however, consisted of more plain tracksuit bottoms and a shirt, rather than a jumpsuit. At least that was a relief. Itachi was faring better off than his partner, but not by much. He was disguised as a 13-year-old girl, short, brown hair and soft hazel eyes. What annoyed him most was the bright bubblegum pink jacket he was wearing, and the yellow skirt that was brighter still. One of these days, he was going to turn the blonde into a stain in the sidewalk. "Because you didn't want to get noticed, so I decided to disguise you in the attire that I thought most appropriate." He slowly headed out the front door. "You guys coming?" Needless to say, both of the SS rank missing nin were fuming at the 10-year-old academy student. Jumping from rooftop to rooftop with some limited use of chakra on Naruto's part and just pure muscle strength from Kisame and Itachi's. Though their appearances were severely altered, their muscle mass and strength were retained, much to their joy and Naruto's chagrin. He wanted to see them both fall down and destroy a couple buildings. They were making good time on their way towards the Hokage Tower. Despite having no access to their chakra, the SS rank missing nin were fast, and were seeming held behind by Naruto, who was sprinting over the buildings to the best of his current abilities. He didn't go about using Kyuubi chakra everywhere. "Kisame-san, are you still annoyed about these transformations?" Naruto asked the redhead on his right, to which the redhead only scowled up at him without giving an actual verbal response. "I'll take that as a yes." "So, what do we do once we get to the Hokage? I assume you have a plan?" Itachi, the brown-haired girl on his left, asked. He was anxious, to say the least, to meet the Hokage again. He hadn't exactly left on friendly terms with the old man. "I have a meeting with the old man. Once I get through with that, I plan on springing that fact about you too." Naruto seemed to think for a bit. "But I don't know if you will be allowed to stay for the meeting though, it might include some sensitive information." "That's fine. We respect the village's need for secrecy. We will sit it out if we need to," Itachi replied. Out of the pair of them, Itachi did most of the talking while Kisame did most of the slaughtering and threatening. They traveled in silence for a while. Naruto didn't have the liberty to choose where he lived, so his apartment was quite far away from the Hokage Tower. Even via rooftops, it took a while for them to make the journey. Naruto was the first to break the silence. "Out of curiosity, why were you guys sleeping on my couch? Seeing as you have been fugitives for so long, wouldn't one expect you to be on high alert at all times? We traveled for a few days without rest. We were planning on just waiting up for you, but since you took so long, we ended up falling asleep." This time, it was Kisame that decided to answer. Surprisingly, his answer didn't involve murder. The fact that the couch was comfortable helps too. Naruto's only reaction to this was a prompt sweat drop that he soon wiped off. They had arrived at the cylindrical tower where the Hokage resided and worked from. It served as the main operational base where all the main offices in the village resided, including the Hokage's office and the mission center. "Alright, let's go in through the window. I don't like doing in through the entire damn tower. The glares and the shouting matches are too troublesome and I don't feel like dealing with them," Naruto muttered to his companions. Walking up the side of the building with the use of chakra, Naruto didn't notice that the other two didn't follow him. Walking up to the Hokage's window, he perched on the windowsill and looked down, seeing the two's predicament. "I guess you guys can wait out here. I'll talk for you guys, that might be better to calm the old man's nerves." The two simply nodded up at him. Going in through the window, he found the Hokage deep in conversation with what looked to be a Junin with a navy blue face mask that covered most of his face up to the bridge of his nose. His Hite was slightly crooked, covering his left eye. "Kakashi, it's about time you returned to full duty. I needed some reinforcements to my ranks soon. Someone as skilled as you would be a great help." Just then Naruto decided it was the perfect time to drop in and interrupt the party. "You wanted to see me, Gigi?" Naruto asked, ignoring the Cyclopean ninja for now. "Yes, Naruto, give me a moment." Sarutobi turned towards Kakashi. "Go to the mission center, I have a mission ready for you." Kakashi silently nodded and shinned straight out of the chair. Naruto walked around the Hokage and sat on the chair that his senior previously occupied. The mood instantly turned somber as the gravity of the situation caught up with Naruto. Well, first of all, I got a report saying that you were leaking Kyuubi's chakra in the hospital. Tell me, Naruto, what was that about? The Hokage asked. Naruto sighed and proceeded to relay the story of what happened with Kurama. Needless to say, Hiruzen Sarutobi was shocked beyond his ancient years. To think that the Kyuubi, the great demon lord, would take a liking to the boy and actually strike a bargain with him. It was a ridiculous idea. As Naruto relayed more and more of the story, the old man's reactions started to become more and more pronounced. Starting with wide eyes, he quickly moved on to sweating, then shaking and beyond. Though, to his credit, he managed to not wet or soil himself. So let me get this straight, Naruto. You basically released the seal that cost us the life of our greatest hero, the fourth Hokage, your father. Oops, Sarutobi quickly went silent. He was scared of what Naruto's reaction may be to finding out that it was his father that condemned him to a life in hell. It's fine, Gigi. I already know about Minato Namikaze being my father, though I am still curious to this time about who my mother was. Father made some references to my mother, though he never mentioned her name outright. Right, you will have to tell me the story of how you found out about that at a later date. But anyhow, back to topic. You basically wasted his sacrifice and set the Kyuubi free and then struck a bargain with him that he may or may not respect. He sounded more incredulous than shocked. He learned from years of experience that Naruto wasn't the most predictable person in the world. Quite accurate. You shocked me to no end. That isn't the end of it, I believe. Would you like me to introduce my guests in person, or would you rather have me talk on their behalf? The Hokage's eyes narrowed in suspicion. There was no way this child was going to surprise him any more than he had already done on this night. I think I would rather meet them. Very well. Naruto's voice was barely above a whisper, hardly audible to Sarutobi's old ears. Naruto stood up and walked around to the window. Not sparing the old man another glance, he jumped straight out of it. Itachi and Kisame looked up to see Naruto walking towards them. Wordlessly, he grabbed both of them around the back of the collar and walked back up to the Hokage's office. Neither of the missing nin voiced their opinions on Naruto's mode of transport, deciding to keep it to themselves. Well, Naruto, I see nothing that could shock me so far. Naruto decided to take his spot on the chair once again before responding, setting his guests on the chairs that were beside him. Oh, that's due to the fact that they are under the effect of my transformation jutsu. Looking towards his companions, he raised his hand in half a seal. Release. Both of their transformations went up in a poof of smoke. Once the smoke had cleared, both had returned to their original appearance, though Kisame was missing his dear great sword, Samahata. Noticing Itachi and remembering the identity of Kisame from a bingo book, Sarutobi only pointed and sputtered. Shock was written all over his face, his eyes wide and his mouth opening and closing in a good imitation of a fish. What are you doing here? Sarutobi roared, though he controlled his voice so that nobody outside his office would become suspicious. The last thing he needed was to have some civilian clerk coming into his office to see either of these two men. Naruto and Kisame looked towards Itachi, as if expecting him to answer. The usually calm man looked slightly flustered, though he still explained about their sudden appearance in his village. Basically, up until now, we were part of a secret organization called Akatsuki. The person that leads the group calls himself a god and expects all of us to bow down to him. The two of us decided to leave the group, seeing as it didn't sit well with us. Itachi took in a breath before he started explaining about their plans. Akatsuki planned to capture the Biju and eventually take over the world. The two of us leaving stalled their plans, but it's not a permanent solution. To resolve the issue permanently, we came here to train Naruto, the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki, in an attempt to permanently thwart their plans. What was your reason for coming here to train Naruto? Why not one of the other Jinchuriki? Sarutobi asked. Though the man had calmed down somewhat and was no longer roaring, he was still suspicious. Why wouldn't he be? He was sitting in front of men that could destroy nations if they so wished. There are several reasons. Naruto is the carrier of the strongest of the Biju. I am originally from this village. This village is the most accepting and has the most understanding leader. Itachi was done explaining to the old man, and now moved on to his requests. We request that you allow Kisame to take up a position as a Junin and allow me to take over my former position as an Anbu captain. Also, please keep my return a secret from the rest of the village. As for our residents, we can manage to stay with Naruto. Are these terms agreeable for our residents in the village? Sarutobi sighed. On one hand, if this wasn't a trap, he would gain 2 very strong ninja for his rank and 2 personal tutors for Naruto. On the other hand, this could end up destroying the village if it was a trap. The Hokage, old and trusting as he was, decided to believe it was the former. Alright, come back here in a couple of days to pick up the paperwork for you to be instated into our ranks. Itachi, Kisame and Naruto all looked pleased. And Itachi, welcome back to the village. Beams of sunlight poured in through the open curtains, lighting the room in a warm, orange glow. The sun was barely up over the horizon, but Naruto was already awake. It was going to be his first day back at the academy after the break, and it was going to his first day training with Kisame. The village had taken the news of Kisame joining the ninja ranks surprisingly well. They completely ignored the fact that he was formerly an SS-ranked criminal and a part of an organization that was planning on world domination. What they focused on was the fact that they would see a strong Junin join their ranks. Itachi and Kisame had decided to let the latter handle the basics of Naruto's training, like taijutsu and kenjutsu, since he was a better teacher for Naruto. Plus, he was better at those 2 subjects than Itachi anyway. Itachi and Kisame had been living with him for a couple of weeks now, and they hadn't started their formal training just yet. Well, not the techniques and jutsu portion, anyway. Itachi did, however, teach him a jutsu to help him train faster. Flashback. Naruto had just walked into his apartment after a sweaty day at the training grounds. The students got a 2-week break after the graduation exams are over and Naruto was using his to train. Suddenly, Naruto found his way blocked by a hard body that was slightly taller than him and felt akin to a steel wall. Itachi stood there, looking at Naruto's sweaty, red face. He looked as if he was contemplating something, looking at him with his Sharingan active. Sharingan, not Mangekyo, so it wasn't as scary for the boy as it could have been. Naruto, come outside with me to the training grounds for a while. I'll teach you a new jutsu. Itachi said, but he didn't get the hyperactive response he was expecting. Yes, Itachi ni, Naruto mumbled, before walking back out the door he just came in from. They were currently stood in Training Ground 3, a small grounds used for drills and taijutsu practice. Training dummies and wooden posts littered the training ground, some battered and in tatters while others looked brand new. So Itachi ni, what jutsu did you want to show me? Naruto asked, already tired from his day-long training session earlier. He had spent the last 10 or so hours kicking away at a wooden post to improve his taijutsu, and he wasn't exactly energetic after all of that. Shadow Clone Jutsu, Itachi said in his monotonous, deep voice. Though there was an underlying tone of humor, I heard from the academy teachers that you are terrible at the clone jutsu, so I decided to teach you something better. Naruto only sighed. Itachi was right, of course. Naruto was terrible at the clone jutsu. No matter how little chakra he put in it, it would always overload and end up looking like a pale ghost that just finished emptying the entirety of its stomach and bowels, including the intestines. Itachi, knowing Naruto learned better through experience and actually doing things, decided to give Naruto a demonstration. Putting his middle and index finger together, he crossed them over and muttered, Shadow Clone Jutsu, and immediately, 2 clones appeared on either side of him. Naruto copied exactly what he saw Itachi do, and manipulated his chakra the same way he felt Itachi do it. Pushing chakra out of his body, and manifesting it into a body similar to his own outside his own body. That's what he saw Itachi doing. Shadow Clone Jutsu, something wasn't right. Naruto had chakra reserves that rivaled Kage's, so why was he feeling so drained from something so simple? Itachi had made 2 perfect clones and he didn't even look fazed. There was no way Naruto's chakra control was so bad, was there? Itachi chuckled lightly. It was the first time Naruto heard him do such a thing, and frankly he was scared. What's wrong? Naruto asked. Leave it up to a Jinchuriki to create 2,000 clones on the first try. Naruto looked around behind him to see a legion of clones stretching into the woods behind him. He promptly passed out from chakra exhaustion. Flashback end. Naruto swung his legs over the edge of the bed and instantly felt heavy. He was still trying to get used to the weights that Kisame had made him wear starting a week and a half ago. He must have been insane, who started a 10-year-old kid's training by strapping 20-pound weights to each limb and 30 pounds on his torso? And he told him to not take it off even when he slept. Naruto groaned. At first, he couldn't move an inch off the floor after the weights were strapped onto him, but now that he was slowly getting used to them, his movement started to become easier. Though it took some effort, he was now capable of walking, running, doing push-ups and sit-ups. That, however, was all that he was currently limited to. His daily training schedule comprised of spending 5 hours doing non-stop running, an hour of rest, 3 hours of constant push-ups and 2 hours of relentless sit-ups. Kisame had said something about increasing base strength and stamina before beginning speed and actual technique training. That on its own would have been an effective training schedule, but the added weights and the 1,000 clones that were training with him meant that he was actually training for 10,010 hours a day. Normally, the physical fatigue and exhaustion would kill a normal ninja, seeing as dispelling a shadow clone not only returned the memories and results of training, but also the fatigue that had been built up through training. Naruto, however, was alive and perfectly healthy, courtesy of the fox that was sealed within him. Even though he did roughly 420 days worth of training in one day, a good night's sleep did wonders to revive him. Walking over to the wardrobe on the other side of his room, he pulled out his "Kill Me Now" orange jumpsuit. Naruto sighed. This was going to be a long day at the academy. Naruto was walking through the village's main street, his destination being the Ninja Academy. Well, stomped might be the more appropriate word. He couldn't exactly walk like a normal ninja while he was wearing all the weights he was wearing. Naruto hated walking down the main street. Everyone either stared at him in disdain or just glared, some chucked small pieces of rotten fruits. While it was slowly became rarer as he became older, some people also thought it appropriate to beat him. The fact that he was wearing his usual "Kill Me Now" orange jumpsuit did not help. Being a ninja and all, he was meant to be stealthy and not stand out. His attire, however, did the exact opposite and make him stand out like a sore thumb from the crowd, whose attire usually consisted of duller colors like gray. Truthfully, Naruto hated his attire. He didn't like orange at all, but he still wore it in an attempt to keep up his cheerful persona. After he had released the seal on himself on that fateful night, he had found that several old traits had left him, being replaced by new ones. Gone was the old cheerful boy, replaced by a calm, calculating young man that was always alert. He still retained some of his old self though, the happy aura, the innocent smile. Just because he wasn't going around pranking the villagers every day didn't mean that he was a completely different person. He may have changed, but he was in no shape or form a brooder. He hated those kinds of people. My life sucks, so I'm going to take revenge. What kind of ideal was that for someone to live by? Naruto was calculating. He understood what revenge brought. People that sought revenge became powerful, but all they ever managed to bring to the world was hate and evil, breeding more and more thoughts of revenge until the world was consumed in an inferno of rage. He didn't want that kind of life, living only to kill someone or to overthrow a certain power. It made no sense to him. Sure, it will give you a purpose to live by for a short while, but what will you do after that goal was accomplished? What will you do after you have had your revenge? Regret. That's all that revenge will bring you, along with sadness and despair. These were the philosophical thoughts that ran through the young boy's mind when, absent-minded as he was at the time, he ran into a pink wall of soft flesh. He knocked the person over and ended up sprawled over the back of the said person, on the floor. Coming out of his reverie, Naruto realized the unfavorable situation he was in right now. He was spread-eagled over Sakura, the top kunoichi in his ninja class, on the floor on Main Street, with hundreds of people staring. Ino Yamanaka laughed hysterically as she looked over at his predicament, though she wasn't laughing at Naruto. She was laughing at Sakura Haruno, her somewhat of a love rival for the love of Sasuke Uchiha, the class prodigy and resident emo. Sadly, though, Sasuke paid absolutely no attention to the horde of fangirls he had accumulated over the years. See, Sakura, you should take Naruto and be happy with him. Sasuke is way out of your league. Ino was just trying to egg her on. It was a normal thing for the girls to argue over Sasuke, though neither had a hope of wooing his heart. Naruto got off the girl hastily, muttering an apology he knew would be ignored. Rather than try to explain, He just braced for the pain he knew was going to come. Normally, he would block a strike so slow, but he couldn't do a single thing against her with all those weights strapped to him. "Don't attack me, Baka." With that, Sakura began her hateful treatment of his blonde head, treating him to her best punches. Which, admittedly, weren't all that soft. Naruto was sitting in his seat at the back of the class, nursing his bruised head. It didn't hurt as bad as the soreness from training for 10,010 hours in the space of 10 hours, but it still hurt. Sakura had given him a pretty good beating this time around, for no reason whatsoever. Again, people would often beat him in his younger days, though as he grew older the civilians stayed further and further away from him. He didn't know why, but they seemed to become apprehensive of him, sometimes muttering something about, "The demon is getting stronger, he'll kill us if we go near him." That was something about the villagers that he didn't understand, as intelligent as he had recently become. They always treated him as if he was Kurama, even though it was pretty obvious the demon lord and he were two completely different entities. Were they blind? Probably, seeing how angry they were. "Not everyone can be a saint like you, brat. When I was forced to attack this village under that genjutsu, I killed a lot of their family members. They can't get revenge on me for killing them, so they do the next best thing and attack you, the container. It's a miracle you're as pure-hearted as you still are, brat." It wasn't often that Kurama spoke to him, but when he did, he was there either to make a point, or make fun of Naruto, something the fox enjoyed wholeheartedly. "I understand why they do it, Kurama ni. I'm not an idiot, but understanding their reasons doesn't make it any less frustrating." Naruto thought back to his tenant through his mental link. He cut the link as Iruka stepped into the class, hearing Kurama laugh heartily as his voice faded from his mind. "Hello, class, it's nice to see you again." Nobody paid any attention to Iruka, favoring their own quiet conversations over paying attention to their teacher. Iruka used his big teacher head jutsu and started screaming to get his students' attention, "Quiet you brats." The result was immediate, everyone shut their mouths and turned to the front of the class and paid rapt attention to Iruka. They knew he meant business as soon as he started using that jutsu to get them to quiet down. "Alright, most of you are probably wondering why you are back here." At this, everyone but Naruto nodded in agreement. He was the only one that was aware of the situation with the traitor within the academy teachers. "While you already passed the academy's graduation exam, you have been held back for an extra 6 months for supplementary lessons. Due to some corruption and foul play among the teachers, the amount you students learned is under scrutiny from the Hokage and the Ninja Council. They want you to stay back an extra 6 months to make sure that you learned everything to the standard that is expected of Leaf Genin." As soon as Iruka was done with his explanation, many hands rose up in the air. Though their teacher hadn't asked if they had any questions, they knew that Iruka would always try to answer any questions they had for him. Among these hands were Sakura's eager one. "So sensei, what happens after the 6 months are over? Do we take a test of some sorts or go straight into ninja duty?" Sakura asked curiously. She wanted to know why this kind of an exception was made for them. Though she was no stranger to special treatment due to her mother's presence in the civilian council, she was still stranger to special treatment that affected her negatively. "You will retake the graduation exam." Everyone looked at him with murder in their eyes. But anyhow, on to today's first lesson. Tree climbing. Everyone shouted out a form of verbal complaint, ranging from, "But sensei, we already know how to climb trees," to, "HNN, the Uchiha don't climb trees. That kind of thing is reserved for monkeys." Iruka sighed. Obviously, his students were too closed-minded to see the truth behind his words. Deciding to stop the riot that was threatening to break out within his classroom, he started to speak out, only to be interrupted by the last person he was expecting to understand the exercise. "Fools, who said you will be climbing trees normally? Tree climbing is an exercise used to increase your chakra control." Everyone looked at him like he had grown a second, third and fourth head. Sighing, Naruto continued. "You focus your chakra to your feet so you stick to the tree trunk. You climb the tree with your feet and chakra only. And this helps us improve our chakra control by?" Kiba was the one that spoke up and he wasn't the most polite person in the class. At least, that's what was suggested through the tone of his voice. The feet are where it is hardest to focus your chakra. By learning to stream a steady amount of chakra to your feet to climb the tree, you inevitably increase your ability to mold and control your chakra. Iruka finished off his student's explanation. "Thanks for bailing me out there, Naruto. No problem, Naruto only grinned at his teacher, as he often did with Iruka around. He was his favorite teacher for a reason, and that reason was that Iruka happened to be one of those very few blessed people that weren't idiotic enough to hate him for something that was totally out of his control. Alright class, I want you to go outside in an orderly fashion and find a tall tree to climb. Everyone did as instructed by their teacher, and filed out in an orderly fashion, starting from the front of the class. Naruto, obviously, ended up right at the back and near his lazy friend Shikamaru. An hour had barely passed since Naruto and his class had headed outside to train on their chakra control, and it wasn't going well for most of them. Some people with larger chakra reserves were still running full pelt at their designated trees, while others lay at the foot of their tree, completely exhausted. A few were passed out cold. They had come out to the playground expecting an easy climb up a tree. What they had found was an utter impossibility that a few of them could even come close to getting right. Within a few attempts, most of them had found out just how hard it was to climb a tree without the use of their arms. Instructions were to run all out at the trees, then attach themselves using chakra while they ran up the tree. While most had blindly followed this instruction, they were unaware of the consequences their actions brought with them. A few feet up the tree, most of them had either slipped off the tree due to using too small an amount of chakra to hold them there, or because, like Sasuke, they had used too much chakra and that pushed them off the tree trunk. Thinking quickly, Sasuke was the only one that managed to mark how far up he had gotten with a kunai. Falling back down the tree, he landed heavily, though still on his feet. Others weren't as lucky, and landed either on their back, and the really unlucky ones landed painfully on their heads. All was not lost for the class though. A few of their classmates had managed to climb up quite far up the tree. They had managed to mark how far up they had gotten with their kunai and land on their feet every time they fell off. This group was very small, however, and consisted only of the top kunoichi in the class, Sakura Haruno, the lazy genius, Shikamaru Nara, and surprisingly Hinata Hyuga and Naruto. Most people expected Sakura to do well in this. She had a small chakra reserve and that gave her superb control over her chakra, for an academy student that is. Shikamaru was also expected to do well, though he slept during most of their lessons and watched the clouds while he was meant to train. The brunette had brains far better than anyone in the class and was pretty good at the less physical aspects of academy life. The last two of the group were unexpected to say the least. Hinata was shy. Though she was the heiress of the current strongest clan in the village, she was widely known as someone that was weak and subpar in her abilities. Seeing her climb the tree with relative ease was something of a shocker to her classmates. Naruto. If people were surprised to see Hinata climbing the tree, they were utterly flabbergasted at what was happening with Naruto. He was the dobi of the academy, the dead last, the one that came out at the bottom of every test. So, imagine their surprise when he walked up the tree, going higher than everyone else in the class. When landing, thud that most people landed on the floor with, Naruto landed with somewhat of a loud booming sound, courtesy of the weights he was currently wearing, which surprised most people. This carried on for the rest of the day, with everyone slowly improving how far up the tree they could climb and getting closer and closer to chakra exhaustion. Naruto had gone straight to training ground 3 after his classes at the academy was finished. Truly, they had stepped up their training in the academy, but it was still nowhere near enough to tire out the Jinchuriki. Naruto was planning on doing his usual training with his clones, when he saw Kisame standing there with his arms folded over his chest. "Naruto, come over here." Naruto obeyed his teacher, for that's what Kisame was to him now, and walked up to him. "From today onwards, we start your taijutsu lessons. Kenjutsu will come after you have mastered the basics of my taijutsu course." "Right. Make 2,500 clones." Naruto stared at him. "Make 2,500 clones, Naruto. But wouldn't that many clones training at once kill me?" Naruto asked, scared for his life for the first time. He came close to death quite a few times in his life, but never before was he actually scared of it. "Don't worry. We are cutting your training time by half, to 5 hours per day, since you have to go to the academy now. That means the increase in clones only adds an extra 2,500 hours of training per day." The color slowly returned to Naruto's face. Crossing his fingers in the familial seal, he muttered, "Shadow Clone Jutsu," and immediately, the entire area was filled with Naruto lookalikes, though there was a small clearing between the real Naruto and Kisame. Alright, your first combination. It's basic, but in a fight, it does the job. Left jab, right straight and a left roundhouse. As he spoke he gave Naruto a slow example of what the combination should look like. His arms and legs moved gracefully as he punched and kicked the air around him. You try it. Naruto tried to copy what Kisame did, but something felt wrong. He wasn't producing the same kind of destructive force that Kisame had produced, and his suspicions were confirmed by a shake of the head from Kisame. No, Naruto, you can't stop Between each hit. It's a combination, meaning you hit one after the other. If you stop, you kill the momentum in your movement. Try again. Naruto did the motions again, going through them with much more fluidity this time. They felt stronger somehow, but he felt like something was still wrong. His hits were more powerful, but it didn't feel sharp or fast. Better, but still not good enough. You're standing on the spot while you're hitting. Once you hit your opponent, he's not going to stand on the spot, is he? No, he's gonna get knocked back. Rather than standing on the spot you should jab, pivot on your left foot and step in with your right foot while you do the right straight. Straight after the straight, you use the momentum, pivot on your right foot and bring your left foot around to kick. Try again. He followed his instructions to a T. His punches seemed fine, but something was up with his kicks. When he pivoted on his right leg, he felt like he was falling backwards diagonally. Almost there. Straighten out your right leg when you pivot. Don't lean back when you're kicking, keep your back straight and raise your hips. Rather than going for their head, go for their ribs. Naruto nodded and did the motions for a fourth time, getting it right at last. Good, practice for 5 hours with the clones, then head back home. While speaking, he slowly faded out in a white, misty glow. I could do without the theatrics. Naruto screamed after him as he shinned away from the clearing. Ordering his legion of clones to get in lines, he started his daily practice, no longer feeling the effects of his weights. It had been 6 months since the start of the supplementary academy classes had begun for the 10-year-olds. Naruto had been progressing quite well. His chakra reserves resembled that of 2 Kage combined, thanks to the combined efforts of both the Kyuubi and his Uzumaki heritage. His genjutsu and ninjutsu were quite strong for someone still in the academy, especially his defensive ninjutsu. His kenjutsu was still subpar since Kisame hadn't gotten around to training him, and his taijutsu was the best in the village. Yep, Naruto Uzumaki had officially surpassed Maeda and the Hokage at taijutsu. He was constantly training under Kisame with a very large number of clones at his disposal, so right now, Naruto had a total training time of 260 years, give or take a few months. That was just the pure amount of training time though, it didn't factor in time to sleep, so truthfully, it would equal to something around 500 years of hardcore taijutsu training under Guy. Not only had he trained with his clones so much that his technique had become near flawless, he was also training with over 300 pounds worth of weights on, though that was still unknown to him. He was under the impression he was still wearing 110 pounds, not knowing that Itachi had added small amounts of weight to his existing weights every night while he slept. It was small enough that he didn't notice the change, but large enough that once it was accumulated over a long time, it would make him very, very fast. While walking down the road, he noticed a newcomer walking down the main street. He looked about to be about Naruto's age, but he was really tall, easily 5 inches 9, so Naruto couldn't be sure. He wore what looked to be remnants of a simple black kimono, though it could hardly be called anything but remnants since it was so tattered, and had a katana strapped to his right hip, though from the length of the blade, it looked more like a nodashi. He looked muscular but somehow gangly, with long black hair that looked wiry and was swept back roughly. He had a pouch for ninja tools on his right thigh, so Naruto could guess he was right-handed. From the angle he was standing at, the boy looked underfed and malnourished. Naruto decided to ignore the boy for now, but from the corner of his eye, he could see the villagers giving him the very same glare they reserved solely for him. That got Naruto's attention, and he decided to ask the boy why something like that would happen if he ever met him again. Usually, Naruto would sit near the back of the room so he could pretend to be asleep, while he actually paid rapt attention to what happened in class. Though people usually didn't believe him, he was actually quite interested in learning. However, this one September morning found Naruto seeking a seat beside a certain lavender-haired clan heiress. Why? Because he had noticed her stalking him for the past 4 months, though he was sure it was happening for much, much longer, and frankly he wanted answers as to why she was stalking him. Did she like him, or was she just plain creepy? As he sat down on the only seat next to the Hyuga girl, she was sitting on the outer edge of the bench designed for 3 people, so Naruto was sitting in the middle seat. He saw her start and heard her let out a small eep. Though it was so quiet, he might as well have imagined it. He didn't know why, but she seemed to be cowering even more into herself than usual. Deciding to go right into the questioning, seeing as nobody but the stoic Shino was in class yet. He turned to her, intent on finding out answers, but lost himself in her pupil-less eyes. Was she always so beautiful, or were his eyes playing tricks on him? Breaking out of his stupor with a sudden shake of the head, he thought it best to get the questioning over and done with before he got a bigger audience for his interrogation. "Hinata-san, why have you been stalking me for the past 4 months?" Naruto asked tentatively, not sure as to how the shy girl would react to being directly confronted. It's not been only 4 months. Hinata stuttered quietly, but due to his enhanced senses from being a Jinchuriki, he heard every word perfectly. "Okay. How long have you been stalking me for? And, please don't stutter. You have nothing to fear," Naruto reassured, hoping that kindness mellowed the girl out enough to get him some honest answers. "It has been 4 years since we started in the academy," Hinata replied, forcing away her stutter and willing her blush away, though her voice still stayed quiet. She could never get over her shyness, something her father had ensured by his mistreatment of her. "Okay, so you have been stalking me for the past 4 years. Why? What do you see in me that drives you to stalk one such as myself?" Naruto asked, somewhat afraid of the answer he was going to get. It took a while to explain everything, but she told Naruto of her treatment at the hands of her father and the main branch of her family, how Naruto embodied the determination she seeked, how he was her ray of hope, and how she liked him. "Thanks Hinata, you're the first girl that said something like that to me." Naruto hugged her lightly, not noticing the dark crimson blush that crept slowly up her face. Shino's bugs buzzed lightly and he smiled lightly under the oversized collar of his trench coat, while Hinata promptly fainted. Iruka came into the class an hour or so later to find it a rowdy bunch of newly passed students chattering loudly amongst themselves. Weird, they're usually chatty, but they aren't that loud. Must be their excitement over finally being able to graduate. Well, they earned it. Most of them passed the graduation exam twice. Iruka thought proudly, reminiscing about how hard his students had trained over the past 6 months. Flashback, hey, I might have decided to time skip, but I ain't just gonna hand em powerful techniques without explaining them somehow. The class Iruka Amino had been in charge of was excited. They had been taking his supplementary classes for just about 2 months now, so they were excited about this cool move Iruka was going to show his class. Honestly, it had been hard work, but they had made much more progress during these 2 months of catch-up classes than they had ever done in the academy. Iruka walked into the class to find a bunch of 10-year-olds looking at him expectantly, rather than chatting amongst themselves like they usually would. He chuckled, his trick of telling them he would be teaching them something interesting got their attention really fast. "Alright class, today I am teaching you nature manipulation." Combined shouts of, "Cool!" came from his class, as he almost held his ears in pain. Years of duty as a ninja made his hearing quite sensitive. Iruka walked over to each of his students and handed out what looked like small bits of paper. After he had handed everyone a medium-sized square, he went back to his desk and went into full lecture mode. "Before I teach you anything about nature manipulation, I am going to give you a lesson on them so you know what you are getting into." At this, everyone except Sasuke and Naruto groaned out loud. Even the stoic Shino managed a small sound of displeasure. "Of course I am. You didn't think you would get away without a lecture from me, did you?" "No, sensei," the class chorused simultaneously. Iruka giggled softly like a schoolgirl and went into his explanation. "There are 5 basic forms of elemental chakra. I say basic because it is possible to combine them later on through extreme control or bloodline limits, but that is far beyond the capability of academy students. Anyhow, people have a genetic affinity to a certain element, which is the easiest for them to master. Due to the high amount of chakra that is needed to use elements, very few ninja are capable of using more than 2 elements. The elements are balanced in a circle. Each element is stronger against one, but weaker against another. This is the natural order of the elements. When 2 jutsu of the same element collide, The one with more chakra in it will win. However, if there is a perfectly equal amount of chakra in the two jutsu, then they will just cancel each other out. This is known as the rule of counterbalance. Normally, when Iruka gave them lectures, half of the class fell asleep. This time around, he could see everyone paying close attention, even Naruto and Shikamaru. So what does the paper have anything to do with this? Leave it to the class genius Shikamaru to ask the million-pound question. Iruka chuckled. These papers are specially made from chakra trees. These chakra papers react to the slightest amount of chakra. The way they react tell you what kind of chakra you have an affinity to. He held up a piece of paper much like the ones he gave to his class, only a second later it burst into flames and burnt to ashes. I have an affinity to fire, so my paper burns away. If you have an affinity to wind, it will be slashed to pieces. Water will dampen the paper. Lightning will crumple it slightly and earth would crumble it to small pieces of dirt. The class eagerly tested out their chakra natures, while shouting out their affinities gleefully. A large portion of the class had an affinity to fire, seeing as this was the land of fire they were born in. Iruka-sensei, it seems I have an affinity to all 5 elements, Naruto called, displaying a row of 5 rectangular strips of paper that showed the 5 different reactions chakra paper was supposed to have upon coming in contact with chakra. Well, it seems you have. No matter, it's rare, but it's possible for a person to have more than one affinity. Though all 5 is a shocker though, that's a great gift you have there Naruto. Iruka called. He was rather calm considering his student just demonstrated a feat not seen within the last 100 years. Lies, Nagato can do the same thing, and they're almost from the same generation. Now, what I am going to teach you are basic D-rank elemental jutsu. They are all defensive jutsu, so there will be no fighting each other to test your jutsu out, am I understood? Iruka asked the class in general, to be answered by a chorus of, yes, Iruka-sensei. Good. Iruka handed each of them jutsu scrolls based on their chakra affinities, though he handed the Uchiha too, upon strict orders from the civilian council to hand him the lightning scroll regardless of what his affinity was, and fire scroll if his affinity was lightning, and he also handed Naruto one of all 5 of the scrolls, courtesy of his affinities being numerous. Now get out into the playground, and practice your jutsu. Flashback end. Iruka smiled, remembering how Naruto had been the first to not only master one of the jutsu, but all 5 of them before one of his classmates finished mastering one of them. Over the 4 months that he had spent practicing the techniques, he had also found a nifty trick that increased the strength of the jutsu. Snapping out of his reverie, he decided to humor his students and use the big teacher head jutsu for the last time on his class. Shut up you brats, Iruka yelled, feigning anger despite being pleased with his class. You all passed your graduation exams and are now genin. I will announce the teams and your new Junin sensei. They should be here to pick you up after lunch. Iruka proceeded to announce the names of all the fodder teams, meaning teams 1 to 6. Team 7. Sasuke Uchiha. Sakura Haruno. Iruka was cut off by a huge shout of glee and another of outrage. Why? No. Cookies for guessing correctly who these 2 individuals were. And Zaraki Kenpachi. Your sensei is Kakashi Hitaki. Iruka finished, as if he hadn't just been rudely interrupted. At his announcement, many looked confused. Who was this Zaraki kid? He certainly wasn't part of their class. Catching their looks of befuddlement, Iruka decided to enlighten them. He is an orphan that has been enrolled into the ninja system recently and has been taking personal catch-up classes on his own. He has passed the graduation exam due to sheer skill in taijutsu and kenjutsu. Here he comes now. And lo behold, a tall raven-haired kid entered the class with a sword strapped to his side. It was the same kid he had seen in the street when coming to the academy, Naruto realized, and he looked quite scary from the front. Hope I ain't late, I kinda got stuck on the roads. Iruka, knowing his reputation for getting into fights, just waved him on. He took the only available seat in the class, which happened to be next to Naruto. Naruto didn't bother talking to him, seeing as he wasn't talking to him, but it was kind of uncomfortable having people stare at the new student next to him, who decided it was a wise choice to wrap his hite around his hand so that the metal protected the back of his hand. Weird, his hite seems smaller than normal. Team 8. Shino Aburame, Kiba Inazuka, Hinata Hyuga. Your sensei is Kurenai Yuhi, no surprises there. Konoha had been looking for a good specialized tracking squad for a while, though the perverted leer that Kiba sent Hinata's way was quite infuriating to a certain Jinchuriki for reasons unknown to himself. Team 9 is still active, so Team 10, Ino Yamanaka, Shikamaru Nara, Choji Akamichi. Your sensei will be Asuma Sarutobi. No surprises there either, the Ino Shika Cho team. Wait a second, Naruto called, aren't you forgetting something? Who am I with? Naruto, due to you being the dead last, you have been assigned a personal sensei. You are alone on a team with Kisame Hoshigaki. Naruto scowled. Why was he the only one with a one-man team? Well, at least he had Kisame to bail him out if need be. What a drag. Naruto drawled, making his best friend Shikamaru smirk. He was starting to rub off on the young blonde. It was 3 hours later than the appointed time for their Junin sensei to come pick them up. All of the other squads were gone, other than Naruto. Who was this Kakashi, and why was he so late? And what the hell was that annoying tapping sound that kept grating on his nerves? Baka, will you stop? Sakura exclaimed, smashing Naruto over the head with a fist. Naruto immediately halted the pencil he didn't notice he had been tapping and muttered a small apology. Why let her bash you around? A deep, gravelly voice asked. Looking around, Naruto saw that the newcomer had spoken for the first time in the long day. You are obviously stronger than her, so why are you letting her do something like that? Zaraki, right? Naruto asked, not bothering with the customary honorifics. Zaraki only nodded slightly. Don't worry about it, I'm the dead last of the academy, so even though I want to, I can't actually do anything about her beating me up. What the hell? He's obviously lying through his teeth. No way in heaven or hell is he weak enough to get beaten around by a fangirl. Before Zaraki could make his feelings known, though, he was interrupted by a door opening and 2 men walking through the door. Kisame, you're late, Naruto roared at his sensei. Oh, I got Naruto. They told me I had to train the dead last, but the idiots obviously just handed me the cream of the crop. Kisame mused out loud, not bothering to reply to his students' accusations. Sorry guys, Kisame and I got talking. So he kinda lost track of time. Kakashi interrupted the rabid fangirl, who was obviously about to make some remark about Sasuke being the best and Naruto being the worst. Meet me on the roof. And with that, Kakashi was gone in a swirl of leaves. Seeing as you're not in an actual team, you get to skip the team test. You can start taking missions from tomorrow. I'll give you a note so you can take as many missions as you want without me being there. What annoyed Naruto wasn't the fact that his sensei left right after he said this, but all the while he was saying this, he was slowly vanishing in wisps of mist. Damn it, stop doing that weird version of the Shunshin. Naruto roared, apparently at thin air, though he got a creepy chuckle as a reply. Naruto was in the mission center, with a scroll in his hand that was given to him by Kisame. He remembered what Kisame had told him the night before and scowled for a second. I have taught you all the taijutsu I can. Technically, since I'm your official sensei now, I'm not allowed to teach you kenjutsu until you are a chunin. So, since you're a ninja now, go do some D-rank missions, make some cash and enjoy life a bit more. True, he hadn't had much money to enjoy his life with. He was given an allowance by the Hokage to live on, but it was just about enough to pay for his housing and buy food to live off of. Of course, Itachi and Kisame paying for their food and shouldering a portion of the household expenses helped, but it still wasn't enough to truly enjoy life. It was only enough for him to get some better food. So now here he was, in the mission center, determined to make some money. He looked absently to the chart that hung behind the chunin on duty, showing how much money was paid for standard missions. SS rank minus 500,000 pounds. S rank minus 100,000 pounds. A rank minus 25,000 pounds. B rank minus 1,000 pounds. C rank minus 250 pounds. D rank minus 10 pounds. Needless to say, Naruto was surprised by the sudden increase in pay rise from B ranks and higher, but he knew that new genin weren't allowed anywhere near them. He might have been strong enough to do one, but the village didn't know that. Walking over to the chunin, he started asking questions about the mission procedures. Tezuka was more than happy to explain to Naruto, seeing as he was a fellow ninja and he held nothing against the boy. Basically, you take a mission, complete it and get the mission scroll signed. If the client has any extra comments to make, they can write it into the scroll. If they want to give the genin a bonus, they can just give the money to your team directly. The money for the actual pay is paid directly into the ninja's account in the ninja bank. Though that makes me ask, where is your sensei or your team? Tezuka asked, curiously. As a reply, Naruto just gave him the signed scroll with a small note inside. I, Kisame Hoshigaki, give permission for my genin team, comprised of Naruto Uzumaki, to do missions on his own without my supervision. I also allow him to take as many missions as he wants at a time. I see. Tezuka mused. Alright, Tezuka-san, can I get 200 D-rank missions with standard pay? Naruto asked with a steely glint in his eye. Tezuka had a hell of a lot of paperwork to do to sign out all those missions. Right, I will be seeing you in a few months. Naruto took the large stack of scrolls outside, but not before leaving a parting comment. I'll see you at the end of the day. Outside, Naruto summoned up 1,000 clones and arranged them in teams of 10. Giving out 2 scrolls to each team leader, he started giving out. Alright, I want you to go around and finish off one mission at a time. Once you have finished the mission, get the scroll signed and dispel all clones other than the leader. The leader will then come in and give the scrolls to the clone I leave here, and then dispel. The clone I leave here will give in the scrolls once all scrolls have been collected, then dispel. Naruto made another clone stand outside the mission center. Go! All of his teams headed out. Naruto headed to Ichiraku's. It had been a while since he visited. Hinata just got back from meeting with her Junin sensei for the first time. Well, it wasn't the first time she met Kurenai, but it certainly was the first time she met her as her Junin sensei. She liked her team. Shino was quiet yet supportive and Kiba was excitable but loyal. She had a feeling they would make great trackers. Walking through the wooden hallways, she made her way towards her father's office. She knew her father wouldn't care, but she was supposed to report to him about her daily activities and the fact that she was safely back in the compounds when she got back. She didn't like it, but her father was the clan head. She came upon the traditional sliding doors that gave entry to her father's office and knocked quietly, waiting for a response. At the call of, "Enter," she went into the office and immediately sat into Seiza. She may have been the heiress, but even she was meant to show respect to the clan head. It's good to see you, Hinata, Hiyashi said quietly, not looking up from his paperwork. Hinata froze. Good to see me? Something isn't right, he has never said anything like that to me. That was mean, but I'm not telling you what happened to Hinata yet, P. It had been a month since he started doing the D-rank missions, and he had kept up a constant stream of them. He was earning a lot of money, but that didn't keep him from being bored. He hadn't thought about boredom when he was training. All he ever got to think of then was the exhaustion. With a sigh, he walked into the mission center to pick up his set of 200 D-rank missions for the day, but stopped in his tracks after seeing who was there. The Hokage was the one giving the missions out today, and Team 7 were seemingly having an argument with him. These chores are boring, old man. Give us something a bit more fun to do, Zaraki complained. Naruto watched from afar, a smirk on his face. Seems like Zaraki had become a bit more open with his emotions since he had become a genin. So you want something more fun to do, Zaraki-kun? The aged Hokage asked, watching the reactions of the other team members. Sasuke looked like he approved, though it was hard to see through all that brooding. Sakura seemed to want to hit Zaraki, though she thought better of it, and Kakashi looked like he wanted to fall through the floor and disappear. So, Kakashi, think your team is ready? Yes, sir. They should be fine with a low to mid-C rank mission. Their teamwork isn't stellar, but their individual prowess may shine through. By that, he meant Zaraki could save their asses if Kakashi was busy. The Hokage motioned to a Chunin, who was sitting next to him, and told him something Naruto couldn't hear. The Chunin went outside and in came an aged man that looked drunk out of his wits. I'm Tazuna, a bridge builder. I thought I was getting real ninja for protection, not some pipsqueak brats. The drunk man, now identified as Tazuna, slurred. For someone that was so drunk, his speech was oddly coherent. Yo, old man, you mind if I tag along with Team 7 for this one? Naruto asked, silently telling Sarutobi that he thought something was wrong with this mission. Why would we need the Dobi to come with us? We are more than capable of protecting a man from bandits and robbers. Sasuke finally makes his presence known. Yeah, Sasuke-kun can do anything. And in comes his loyal Banshee. Geez, do they not see that something isn't right here? Why would a bridge builder need real ninja for protection from bandits? Why not? More the merrier. Seems like Zaraki was the only one in their team with half a brain. Alright Naruto, go ahead and pack for 3 weeks, Sarutobi called, handing Kakashi a scroll for a C-ranked mission. Naruto, you better have a good explanation for why the hell you dragged me out of bed at 11 in the morning. Kisami's voice wasn't loud, but the threat behind that tone was obvious. 2 reasons Kisame. 1. It's unhealthy to sleep for that damn long. 2. You're my Junin sensei, so you have to come with me on this mission. Naruto replied, ignoring the glares from Sakura and Sasuke, and the bored looks from Zaraki and Kakashi. Naruto, it's fine. Go ahead on your own. If Kakashi is there, you should come back alive. I'm going back to bed, so don't bother me. Kisame headed back towards Naruto's apartment, while everyone's sweat dropped. And here I thought I could drag him out. Ah well, Naruto sighed. He was hoping he could bring him along. Having someone as powerful as Kisame around usually raised the rate of success for your missions. Well, our client is here. Sasuke, you have the best eyes, take point. Sakura take the right, Zaraki take left and Naruto can bring up the rear. I'll come last to make sure you guys don't get ambushed. With that, they headed out. They had been traveling for a couple of hours. Having to walk was a bother. Normally they would just jump from tree to tree, but having a civilian in their midst made that impossible. Naruto was on edge. He didn't know why, but he was expecting something to happen. He felt uneasy about this mission, and his instinct never lied to him. Not once in his life. Stop that, brat. Your constant shivering is getting on my nerves, Kurama thought. It had been a while since they talked. Sorry, Kurama. I just get the feeling there is something wrong with this mission. Right then, Naruto passed by 2 puddles on the floor. No one seemed to notice, but he saw Zaraki twitch in anticipation slightly. A puddle on a sunny day when it hasn't rained for a week? Nice disguise, dumbass. I'll talk to you later, Kurama. With that, Naruto cut the link, and again, he could have sworn he heard Fox chuckle before he left. When Kakashi passed the puddles, he showed no signs of acknowledgement, but Naruto knew the war veteran wouldn't miss something so basic. You're mine. 2 voices intoned at once as 2 figures quickly jumped out of the puddle. Before anyone could react, a spiked chain wrapped around Kakashi, and with a tug on both sides, Kakashi was no more. Kakashi-sensei. The banshee wailed. Sakura and Sasuke froze, while Zaraki and Naruto got to work on instinct. Ducking underneath the claw that came at him, Naruto let his fists fly. Faster than anyone could see, his target was on the floor, battered, bruised and unconscious. Naruto's target got off easy in comparison to Zaraki's though. Not bothering to dodge any of the hits, Zaraki drew his long, jagged sword. The blade looked chipped and worn, but Naruto could see it was sharp. The claw that came at Zaraki was no longer attached to the attacker's shoulder, but lying forgotten on the floor as Zaraki advanced on his prey with a manic grin. With a glint in his eyes, he sliced down from crown to crotch, ripping the man perfectly in half. Good work, Zaraki-kun, Naruto-kun. Sasuke, I didn't think you would freeze up like that. Sakura, stop wailing, I'm not dead, Kakashi called from a branch high up in the canopy. Sakura stopped crying in the favor of looking at where the voice came from. You're not dead, sensei? Everyone held their ears in pain. The Harunos were truly blessed with piercing voices, and not in a good way. Of course he ain't dead. Human bodies get sliced up in fleshy chunks, not bits of wood, Zaraki called from where he stood, pointing to several pieces of splintered wood where Kakashi supposedly died. Alright, we need answers. Naruto advanced towards Tazuna, suddenly taking charge. His instincts told him something was up, and his instincts had never disappointed him. Why the hell are their enemy Chunin after you? They weren't after me, they attacked you. What should I know? Tazuna shouted back, though he knew he had been found out. All of a sudden, this pipsqueak brat was looking terrifying to him. Don't play possum with me, old man. Either you talk, or we abandon this mission. Your damn choice. Naruto wasn't in the mood for games. Zaraki sheathed his sword after he was done cleaning the blood off. Sakura got off the floor and Kakashi came back down to the floor from his high perch in the trees. Tazuna explained to the gathered ninja about his country, Abud Gato and the bridge. To them, the bridge was the only hope, the only way they were going to get out of that hellhole of a place. Wait a second, doesn't the Land of Waves have a hidden village of its own? Naruto asked, remembering one of the history scrolls Itachi had given him to make up for his lack of learning from the academy. It does, but Gato has taken over the village and given shelter to his missing nin. We can't do anything about it and it's given him more and more power over us. Tazuna was almost in tears now. The man looked a decade older than his age and he looked broken. Go ahead, abandon the mission. Our country will be Gato's slaves, our women will get raped. My grandson is going to cry. Save the sob story, old man. We are ninja, we are trained to hide our emotions, Naruto interrupted. How about this, we take this mission, and 1% of all income from your hidden village goes to us. 1% for each of us, that's 5% and another 10% for our village. And while you're at it, you might as well sign a pact of non-aggression with our village. Ridiculous, that is way too much money just to get me to my house. Tazuna yelled. Oh, who said we are just getting you to your house? Tazuna looked at him, puzzled. I'll personally bring you Gato's head. Everyone in his vicinity looked at him like he was crazy, though Zaraki was giving him an appreciative grin. Tazuna looked at him like he was an angel on earth. That's all for now. If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments.